What happened to the future? Did the dimension of the future disappear at some point during the 21st century? Why does this new millennium not feel as exciting as we thought it would while we were tripping out to drum and bass music during the 1990s? I think at some point during the 2000s, or perhaps during the 2010s rather, we began to take the future, once it transformed into the present, wholly for granted. Misery still accumulated worldwide: wars, invasions, disease, GFC. It was harder to appreciate the once alleged future every passing year. In the 20th century, the 21st seemed like it could be utopic, euphoric, vaguely psychedelic, a better version of heaven, because no one is ever bored. But now, people are certainly bored. If things are psychedelic, I'm not sure if I'd describe it as a good trip. We're not usually euphoric unless we're eating junk food, and we're certainly nowhere close to a utopia. I used to watch these British TV shows which would air on ABC Kids. These Jim Henson puppets would visit some little local community and the kids would tell the alien reporter how the world works and all that. It's all very seemingly perfect, cyclical and utopian, right? Vaguely Village Green Preservation Society, yeah? Of course, that's how it's all supposed to work, but things don't always pan out so smoothly. We try our best, of course, although still it isn't often we hear, at any time, about the coming wonders of the future. And why would we? Everyone just wants to get by, as usual. The future, as foretold in the 20th century, would take place in the 21st, but it turns out that this must have been some self-imposed motivational myth. Or was it? It depends on one's perspective. It really does. And it doesn't require being in denial about anything that I'm aware of. Think about what it is which is missing from the present which we imagined for our hypothetical future. What is it? A sense of calm and serenity or confidence? Nothing to worry about? A warm feeling in your tummy? Half a gram of soma? For me, and I suspect for many others, it was a sense of wonder, a feeling of cerebral stimulation at nearly every waking moment, a feeling enriched and lucid, a permanent positive LSD trip, essentially. It isn't as hard to turn your life into a permanent positive LSD trip as you think, and the LSD is optional, in my opinion. Don't believe me? Go ask, or let's have a look at the life works of one Alvy Ray Smith. Alvy Ray Smith is responsible for so much of the light in my life. Yours too. I mean this literally, not metaphorically, although that is beginning to apply for myself also. Alvy Ray Smith is responsible for the creation of digital light as we know it. Without Alvy, we wouldn't have digital graphics as we know them today. In the 1970s, he helped pioneer what we call the Alpha Channel. Now, initially, when computer graphics were first being developed in the early 70s, each pixel had its assigned color combination programmed into it, although Alvy, and Ed Catmull, gave the pixel an additional numerical value. This value, ranging from 0 to 1, gave a control over the transparency of the pixel itself. Right? This was a revolutionary tool which paved the way for insurmountable development within that field. Eventually, Alvy wound up working for Lucasfilm, directed the Genesis sequence of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, founding Pixar, directing the legendary Andre and Wally B short film, but was then removed from Pixar in the early 90s after writing on Steve Jobs' whiteboard. Alvy Smith was not at Pixar when they finally realized and released Toy Story. There is no great film out there which chronicles Alvy Smith's story and his vital contributions to history, although I can point you all to a wondrous documentary I discovered and viewed via learning about it via Alvy's IMDb page. This is 1999's The Story of Computer Graphics. Narrated by Leonard Nimoy and featuring interviews with Ivan Sutherland, John Whitney, Smith and Catmull, among others, The Story of Computer Graphics ought to have been made essential educational viewing from the time of its release. Seriously. All of the relevant information about our world today and its future can be encapsulated within this one document. Moore's law claims that the number of possible transistors within one integrated circuit would double at roughly every 2 years. Smith utilized this little theorem in order to muster the confidence he needed to painstakingly program and process digital animation during the 1970s and 1980s. He motivated himself with the logic that the technology would increase at a rapid enough pace that any doubters and naysayers, and there were many, about the effectiveness, financially, technologically, practically, of computer graphics would change their minds and choose to finance their ventures further. And so they did. First with George Lucas, then Steve Jobs. This ended aggressively, but nevertheless, Pixar became the most influential animation studio since Walt Disney's exploitation ring. And they even purchased Pixar, very swiftly. The point is that this technology is only going to become easier and easier to use, and easier than other forms of animation have ever been. Any issue requiring numbers could plausibly generate any visual accompaniment in order to assess the actual quality of any numerically symbolized quantity. This marvelous documentary, directed by one Frank Foster, does not appear to be on YouTube at this point in time. I am outright tempted to make this film available in some way, for ethical reasons. Instead, I will point you all toward another documentary, an earlier production from 1987, more directly involved with Alvy Smith also, titled The Search for Realism. Entailing exactly that in the realm of digital computer animation, The Search for Realism was produced by the BBC in collaboration with the UK's The Open University, with no credited director, for the BFI credits a Kevin Newport as its producer. I almost wanted to discuss that individual 47-minute documentary in and of itself, although I figured it was more of a one-off television special than a film, purely some throwaway educational reporting. Well, not throwaway in terms of its content, quite obviously, but in terms of it being a vision or composition, it's more of a news or promotional piece. I shall link The Search for Realism uploaded on YouTube in the description, because while we cannot view wholesomely the story of computer graphics, I like to think it has a similar feeling of empowerment. The Search for Realism does. In fact, it certainly does, as I viewed it first, actually. And it definitely did. I would encourage you all to download The Search for Realism's YouTube upload onto your computer desktop if you have one. Utilize whatever service you have to. I would like that piece of history to be as available as possible. It cannot be lost. Anyway, the story of computer graphics is one of the best things I've ever seen. It makes me realize what a true magnificent marvel so much of this modern world is, how much painstaking and innovative computer programming genius went into it, and, most importantly, why we've taken it for granted. That last effect is secondary to the film, not in the film itself. It was released in 1999. Instead, we realize how the subsequent millennium differed from the hopefulness presented in Nimoy's script, and while it is possible to despair, it is also possible to instead wonder, wait a minute, what is exactly missing? This thought will be the key to a more fulfilling present, a present which has us no longer dreaming of the future, not for lack of hope, but for lack of a need.